Welcome to the Courageous Leadership Podcast, and I am so glad you're joining us today. We've got something new for you. I really love it. We have the host Shield Within Podcast with us. It's going to be kind of a dual podcast. We're going to do this together. It's going to be fun. So first, I'm just going to have you gentlemen introduce yourself and tell us about your podcast.
Age Before Beauty, Dr. David.
Oh, wow. Okay. Start off with an instant judgment. All right.
Well, we are cops after all.
That's right, man. we don't pull punches.
That's right.
My name's Dr. David. That's my microphone name. I'm a retired licensed professional clinical counselor in the state of Ohio. I retired in 2015. Mark had been my client while I was in private practice. Mm-hmm. And after I retired and moved to Florida, he and I decided we needed to spend more time together. So we got on the phone and we talked, and I got to see him a couple times during the time I was down there. And my marriage fell apart. I came up here 3 years ago, and I was here about a month, and Mark called me on the phone and said, "Hey, want to do a podcast?" And I thought, hell yes, that sounds great. So we started spitballing back and forth, and the next thing you knew, we had an idea and a name, and we started from there. I wrote an intro and an outro. Mark and I got together for the first 7 episodes, just he and I, and then slowly we have added members to the team so that we have 6 people on the team right now. Mark and I remain kind of like the foundation of the podcast, but others have joined us over the course of the last couple of years. And tonight it's just the 3 of us, Mark and me and you, Travis.
We'll just have a good time.
That's right, man.
Now I know who to blame because Mark's so messed up. But I also want to make sure you're not charging us by the hour here while we're having this conversation. We're all good, huh?
We're good, man. Yeah.
What about you, Mark? Obviously, I've known you for years. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Travis, we have known one another for years, and I was just talking with David here before we turned the microphones on how long that I've been a fanboy of yours. I've been a police officer for 30 years. I recently retired. I retired in 2021 after 30 years. I retired as a police sergeant. Found myself, I don't know, in the grips of PTSD, and that's when I first became David's client, and just navigating through all that. Went through a horrific event there at the end of my career. First of all, we had a traumatic event, and my traumatic event, I damn near got my whole crew killed. So that's was the latest or the last probably major event with me that really tipped the scales. And in 2020, I went through an investigation, and during that, shortly after that came out, that's when David and I got together, and I said, "Hey, let's do a podcast. Let's be able to inform people that, number one, mental health isn't bad. That's not a bad word. Let's try and get rid of the stigma." He and I really had a lot of fun during our sessions. Mm-hmm. And how do we get more cops involved to be able to be comfortable with going to counseling? Mm-hmm. And, because of my agency, you're weak, you're fucked up. And, they would look for ways to get rid of you if you went to counseling, which I thought was just terrible. So having gone through that myself and talking with other people around, because I have a pretty good network, not as good as yours, Travis, but I think I got a pretty good network, and some people talking about, hey, they pull you off to the side and say, "Yeah, man, I'm having problems too," but don't tell anybody. So we decided to have the podcast, and the hardest thing about the show was what we're going to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which was,
well, we don't know. First we started off with, you kind of battered around some ideas like, let's call it the recovery room. Yeah, Google that once. You'll get like 1,000 hits. So David came up with the name, and he was just messing around with it one day. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I feel like I need a shield, and come up with my shield within to help me get through this. So boom, he ran it by me. I'm like, oh yeah, that's it, bro. Mm-hmm. And the intro of our show, if you listen in, it's him and I talking with music in the background, and that's also David's work as well. So the intro and the outro is David's work. He's very high functioning, very high thinking, unlike me. He's a very smart man. I'm just a dumb sergeant that got in a bad way, So I think that's it.
Well, it's a great show. You've got some great folks on there that.
Thank you.
I think what I'm impressed by with the most, Dr. David and Mark, is how real it is, right? We were joking before the show that I have 28 John Maxwell books, but I read one of them, so I'm good. I love John Maxwell, but there's just so much of everything in this information age, right? I mean, we live in this weird time where we have all of this information. Mm-hmm. And you name the topic, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm a leadership guy, risk management guy. You guys are, wellness and mental health, all this stuff. But there's so much information. It all sort of, this is what I tell people. If you want to be a police chief in a medium-sized big city, I can tell you how to do it. Mm-hmm. There's a narrative to follow. There's a road to follow. There's a path to follow. And for the most part, you sell yourself. Mm-hmm. You can't be you. You can't be honest. You can't be authentic. It's the same way in the training environment, the podcast environment, media environment. There's a path. If you want to be successful monetary-wise, you have to follow that path. And so we have a lot of inauthentic things out there, and it's doing a lot of damage. Mm-hmm. And I made a choice a long time ago that if I had this one life to live and this one career to have, I was going to be real. Yeah. And that's got my butt in a sling more times than I can think of, but I'm very proud of that. Right. I told somebody a few years ago that if the day I retire, and I guess I will tell you a little bit about myself because your listeners are going to be listening to this as well. Oh, yes. And they may not know who I am, but I just retired for 30 years with the Tulsa Police Department and had an awesome career. I got to do a lot of cool things. And I didn't really know when I got into law enforcement. My dad was a police captain in Fort Smith, Arkansas at the time. And if you'd asked him my goals, I was thinking about this today as I was coming on the show. If you'd asked him my goals in the academy, and I was 21 years old in the academy, fresh out of college, kind of my first real job. I'd had odd jobs here and there, but my first legitimate real job. And if you asked me on that first day in the academy, it would have been my same goal throughout my career. I said, I want to be the best cop I can be. I'd like to be a street sergeant for the most of my career because for some reason that just seemed cool. And Mark, that's the best job on the planet. Everybody
best damn job on the
will tell you that. And then right before I retire, I'd like to make captain because my dad's a captain, and I think that I'd call it good. I had no thoughts about podcasting or training or consulting or all these sort of different areas I'm doing. People will walk up to me in a class and they'll go, I want to do what you do. I'm like, well, I got a story to tell you, because if you want to do it really bad, the odds are you probably shouldn't do it. Right. Because I just fell into it. And so it's pretty strange. But what I saw in my career is I saw this narrative, I saw this path and I saw people being very successful to this day. And there's even a higher level of success. I call them those DOJ chiefs, right? You can really be successful in the retirement if you become the DOJ chief and you have consulting gigs for the rest of your life and to do next to nothing and to ruin police departments and communities along the way. And it just made me sick. I can't really take credit for it. It's just what was inside of me, maybe my family, maybe it's my faith. I just had this yearning to go, I want to do what's right and I want to stand by what's right. And that goes with officers. So when I saw these officers throughout my career getting messed with, getting screwed with, and as I went up in the ranks, and just to tell you, what my goal was not what happened. I'd probably be a little happier today if it was. I ended up making first line supervisor 3 years into my career at the ripe old age of 25 years old. Wow. By the time I was 28, I was a street sergeant. By the time I was 31, 32, I was a captain. I was in middle management, and I was a commander in 2003, 2004, major rank, which is right below the chief rank. So, I didn't really, there was not a secret to that. I just worked hard and tried to do the best I could do, and things just fell that way. I would have been perfectly happy with the street sergeant my entire career, but that's just what happened. But I never really internally changed throughout that. And that didn't bode well as I went through the management ranks, because that did not meet oftentimes what was expected of me. Right. And so when I questioned things and when I wondered why we would do certain things, it was interesting, right? It was really interesting. And I was just naive to think that everybody felt like me. They wanted to do what's right. They wanted to tell the truth. They wanted, to stop people attacking us when they were lying, and we would it just wasn't the case. And so I sort of had this burden, Dr. David and Mark, for the rest of my life. My purpose is to still stand up for this profession. I think one of the saddest things is when people spend 15, 20, 30, 35 years in this profession and they retire, they go, I'm out, I'm done. And you're not done. God built you to serve, right? Yes. And you need to serve. It may be a different capacity, just like you gentlemen are still serving. that really is what I feel my purpose is. So I've sort of fallen in line with really pushing what I would call courageous leadership, which is a weird term because I see the book behind you. Thank you for putting up there today for me, Mark.
Oh, brother, it's always up there.
But that's just a fancy term for great leadership, right?
Yeah.
And it seems to be so rare. It's like a unicorn. And the reason it's so rare is what I just described. That doesn't bode well for long-term success when it comes to finances or careers and this and that, because it's if you're weak and if you go with the narrative, there's lots of avenues and places for you.
Yes.
But I do not believe in the long run those people will be happy. I don't believe in the long run those people will make any changes. I don't believe in the long run those people will leave a legacy. And so my goal, as long as the good Lord gives me time, is to believe in Mark in society the best I can. And so when I'm long gone, that is still there. And it's been an incredible journey. I couldn't ask for anything more. I'm very, very blessed. I meet people like you every single day. And there's a lot of us out there, but they've been stymied, right? They've been beat over the head so much that they have marks on their head, right? And so many people give up. They just give up because they figure out, why do I want to fight this fight? Well, that's because you fight the fight because it's worth it. The men and women that wear this badge are worth it. The communities they serve are worth it. And I'm just so thankful for what both of you do and all the folks that you have on your show. And that's kind of my short summary story.
Well, Travis, I want to go ahead and tell our listeners, and for everyone else that's listening to your show, welcome and thanks for listening to us. I've known you for a long time, and you have left a big mark already, and I feel that you've already have left a legacy. Your book is one of the books, whenever I hear someone that's going to get into management, hey, I want to be a sergeant, and I will buy your book on Amazon, and the one next to it there, Maxwell's, and hand them 2 books to those people. And the reason why is because Maxwell kind of gives you the tools to put in line for whatever the law. The Maxwell's 21 is what I'm talking about. Right. And you're right. All the rest of them basically are just, different derivatives of that original book. Not that everything isn't good. Your book, The Courageous Police Leader, keeps it real. And it puts a perspective out there that take care of your people. And it's so frustrating that, and we've had several discussions on this show, as well as others I've been guests on, that somewhere along the line, we stopped taking care of our people. I think it's Ferguson. I think the lie of Ferguson is where management, not leaders, management in this idea of we need to hold people accountable because they weren't accountable in Ferguson, which is, we're rated explicit. HS, I'm going to say horse. On my show, I can swear like a sailor, and for your audience, I'm not going to do that.
We're not on the radio, so
it's fucking horse shit. Yeah. Throw it out there, and I do this LEO roundtable podcast, and it's streamed on on radio, AM radio, and they sent me this email, and it said here's the 7 words you can't say on radio. And I read the 7 words, and I got about 6 words into it, and I go, well, I don't say any of those words. I don't have anything to worry about. Well, I didn't read the 7th word, Mark. Which was F?
The 7th word is shit. And I do use that word time to time. And I said it one day, and the producer came unglued, man, because apparently the FCC takes that stuff very seriously, right? So, lesson learned. Lesson is this: read the entire sentence. It's important.
Just like attorneys, right? Yeah. And when you said that, it reminded me of that bit that George Carlin used to do.
Yes, absolutely.
The comedian George Carlin. But anyway, in this whole strife of we're going to hold people accountable, it's like I'm all about accountability. Okay. Yep. But when did you quit taking care of people? When did you start taking this officer that he's on midnights, he's endured a lot of stress, he saw a bunch of crap, his wagon is full, he's not going to therapy, he's existing on caffeine, cigarettes, Red Bulls, whatever. Sleeping 4 or 5 hours a day. Now he's starting to make bad life decisions. His family's starting to come apart. So instead of management saying, "Hey, bro, come here, man. We need to talk. You need to start getting your life together. I'm noticing some changes in you. You're calling off sick. Just this isn't you." So instead of cultivating that guy, which most departments, if you're there 10 years, would you think it'd be fair to say, Travis, we have at least $250,000 worth of training in someone if you've been there 10 years.
Oh, easy.
Probably more.
Easy.
I'm just being conservative
easy.
with $250,000.
Yeah.
$500,000.
Add the equipment on top of it.
Yeah,
Easy.
exactly.
Yeah.
So let's say $500,000. We have $500,000 invested in this officer. So what's this manager, not leader, what's the manager's solution? Let's fire him. Let's step him up the discipline, because we're going to hold people accountable. Let's just step him up the disciplinary scale and get rid of him. In the meantime, what's our number one killer of police officers? Is we're killing ourselves. And that's at an alarming rate. Not only are we having line of duty deaths, and now to compound that and add in the fact that officers are going home and whacking themselves. And back in my day, early days, and probably early in your career, what happened to Bill? He was cleaning his gun and shot himself. We all know that was a suicide. I mean, Dr. David got to have an aha moment. He's like, oh, yeah, I used to hear those all the time. Mm-hmm. Well, back in them days, they took care of people. They didn't want that stigma. And having that attitude, the worst thing in the world, because we're not taking care of people, is number one, you're in a bad spot. Maybe you find yourself, your life has come apart, your family's come apart. Now your management's coming at you from the back. We can deal with the guy on the street. I know the terms there. I can't deal with the guy that's attacking me from the rear. And their only thing is that we need to hold people accountable because of a lie we were told of a national event. And there's several of them, and I don't want to get real super political, but I think that we've had a vacuum of leaders. And there's a difference between leadership and management. There's just definite. And I can remember standing up in our command staff meetings and saying, this is bullshit. We need to be taking care of our people. There are road dogs out there that are showing up every day, that are getting used up right now, overtime shift after overtime shift, where they're just not taking good care of themselves. And we need to start having, as departments and as leaders, more empathy for our people that are out there protecting our citizens every day.
I'm waiting on you, Dr. David, but you want to point over to me?
Well, I watched a lot of your presentations over the weekend, the last few days.
I apologize for that.
So far, it hasn't harmed me one bit. And you had a goose story that you told to a presentation. I know that story. And I loved the goose story. And is it
goose or is it geese? I always get in trouble by the Audubon Society, right?
Well, I'm never quite sure. It sounded like it was probably plural. So
okay. Yeah.
when I looked it up online, it was called The Goose Story. Okay. But I loved the principle there of you have a flock of geese flying migration. You have one goose that's breaking the wind, leading everybody else. Mm-hmm. And then it's fatiguing. It's exhausting. And somehow the birds know it's time for somebody else to do that now. And so the front guy falls back. Somebody else comes up front. And it goes like that for miles and miles and miles and miles.
They know the direction. They know the purpose. They know the goal. They're all in it together. Mm-hmm. They always get to the same place. Unless, Dr. David, they're police birds. Then they all backstab each other and change directions, and they fire the head geese, and they bring in the new geese, and they get rid of that program because that geese like that program, and it goes on, right?
Exactly. The number one thing I think I've been educated about in the last 3 years is how law enforcement people fuck each other. And they do it in so many different ways. It's like, I don't know. It must take a lot of creativity, because the whole culture seems to have an element. And everywhere I go, everybody that talks to me about it, everywhere this whole pattern historically of law enforcement people fucking each other. It's whether there's
not in a fun way. You're not talking about the fun way either.
Well, not in my definition. I too kind of get the impression that there are people having some level of enjoyment doing that.
That's for another podcast.
That's
right. It's interesting. And Mark, you brought up Ferguson, and I actually, obviously, in my book, I talk about that because, listen, I think the problem. First off, the problem is I think what both of you guys have just said is why it's so valuable why you do your podcast, because so few people want to actually talk about problems. Mm-hmm. But you're never going to solve anything if you don't talk about problems. Mm-hmm. And I will open up my leadership seminars for sometimes 2 or 3 hours just talking about the problems, because it sets them up for us talking about the last half a day with solutions. And that's not for everybody. There's, like I said, there's a narrative. If I went in there and made everybody feel good and happy, fuzzy, and you're the greatest thing ever, I'd be extremely popular out there on the circuit. But that's not doing us any good, right? I mean, there's all kinds of leadership seminars and conferences, quadruple trilogies. I'm hanging this on my wall, and I ask people, because I've been to a lot of that stuff. I've been to the FBI, NA to AA, and PER for all the East Coast chiefs go to die, and IACP, and this acronym and that acronym. And my question is, well, where has it gotten us?
Yeah.
Where are we as a profession? Is anyone evaluating this? And when you look at Ferguson, and I do agree that was sort of the tip of the spear of what continued on. But here's why I think it happened. When I hit my first squad at the ripe old age of 22, my sergeant at the time seemed like an old guy, but he was probably in his mid to late 40s. Vietnam vet, we're talking early 90s here. Vietnam vet was running the squad, hardcore dude, would take care of you if you meant well. He would hurt you if you didn't, if you had intention to do harm. And I thought to myself, and I'm sort of embarrassed by it at the time, I thought, I can't believe this. I went to college, I got this great job, and now I'm working for my dad again, because my dad was a Vietnam vet that had that same ideology. And I got out of the house, away from my dad. Now I'm working for my dad every day, but I miss them because they're not around very often. And what happened with Ferguson is that attitude of, when we're right, I will defend you to the end of the earth. If you're wrong,
you're wrong.
I will hold you accountable. But if you're right, I don't care what anybody says, because here's what people don't understand. These weak, cowardly leaders want to make people think that this stuff is new. Hey, when I came on, Mark, when you came on, the media lied about us. The activists talk crazy. They'd go to city council meetings and talk nonsense. Now, granted, social media is a force multiplier, but these entities were there.
Yes.
No different. You just changed the name and they're still there today. The difference was we didn't let them get away with it.
Right.
We did not let them get away with it. And I can remember specifically up to the mid 90s and late 90s of somebody lying about us and our chief going on TV, basically pointing a finger at them, calling them a liar.
Yeah.
Right. And that tended to keep other people from lying. It's weird how that happens. But what happened in Ferguson is we had a lot of head knowledge on leadership. But when that chaos came, we could not adapt. Right. We could not own those principles that we saw for so many years in this profession. And we just caved, right? Yeah. And chiefs figured out that, hey, if I just give in and cave, maybe I'll keep my job and we can go on down the road and I can go to this next conference and my pension's padded, because they made a choice. I don't care about the men and women behind the badge. I care more about myself, right?
Exactly.
And as I say all the time, man, if you want to be a leader, it's going to be bloody. It's going to be gory. You're going to hurt. You're in the arena. You're going to get bruised, right? It's not some happy-go-lucky position you have. You're not, and so, but we have a lot of people in those positions that's not why they're there. They're not there to take care of other people. They're there to take care of themselves. Amen. And let me tell you something. I talk a lot about courageous leadership, and there's a lot of great courageous leaders that are unemployed, because they did not give up. They did not give in, and they got 10x'd out of that room. And God bless them. If we had more of them, we would not be in this position. And leadership, everything really bad that has happened in this profession is because of leadership. It's not because of the city council. It's not because of politicians. It's not because of the media. It's not because of No. We did it to ourselves.
Yes.
We let them lie about Ferguson, a legal justified shooting that Obama's Department of Justice cleared the officer.
Right.
We let them lie about Baltimore. We let them lie about Breonna Taylor. We've let them lie. We're so racist, Mark and Dr. David, they can't stop lying about it.
Right.
Right? And we're not a perfect profession. There's no perfect profession, but I would put us up against Chick-fil-A. My goodness, who else will agree to wear a body camera their entire workday? They tried to do it to school teachers during COVID and they flipped out, right?
Yes, that's right.
So we'll do it. And so my department alone records about 6,000 hours a day. So you can contract that around the United States to millions and millions of hours a day. And I'd say, what do they got? What do they got? But nobody's saying that. They're waiting for the next viral moment for some chief to just throw people down. And we're so bad in our profession, guys. We'll let some viral moment happen 2,000 miles away, and all the chiefs around the country come out and talk about it.
Right.
Well, and they don't know anything about it.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
And they're shameless about it. Now, you don't see that in any other profession. Like if some school teacher, sexually assaults a kid, which I don't know, I see on the news every single day in this country. You don't see all the principals around the country going, that's never going to happen at our school, and we've implemented this rules and that rule. No, I think most of society understands that's an anomaly. That's not happening in all the schools. Right. But our own leaders have made the public think that one police incident out of 800,000 cops applies to all of us, not all the leaders, but shame on them. They have done this to us, and we can either set back and let it keep happening, and we will continue to see the degradation, the defamation, the defunding of law enforcement, and it's not going to get any better, or good men and women can stand up against it. And I thank God for both of you men and so many others that are doing that, because there's a lot of us out there. Not everyone has a platform. But there's a lot of us out there that cares about our communities, that cares about this profession, that is sick and tired of this. And I think one of the reasons that some of the personal attacks come for all of us sitting here is because they know the scam's up.
Oh, yeah.
They know we know, right?
Yes.
We are outing them publicly now. And I stopped being nice a few years ago because I tried to be nice and it didn't work. So now I'm kind of to shaming at this point. I got booted off the stage last week from the Department of Justice lawyer.
What?
Oh,
what?
You're upset. You're upset that I said that 14 of the top 20 cities where the most violent cities in America are ran by the Department of Justice. It's not me saying it. Those are the facts according to the FBI. The top 20 most violent cities, 14 of those are ran by the Department of Justice consent decrees. And you mad about that? I don't know why you're mad. It's true, right? It's true.
Now, Travis, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that you got thrown off the stage.
Well, they didn't.
I've heard everything you said.
Throw me off the stage. They didn't try to physically throw me off the stage because that would not end well for them.
So
we'll come back to that a little later.
Okay.
But the scam is up. The scam is up. We know what they're doing. You can't keep pointing at the politicians and activists and saying it's their fault. Same with all the other issues we're dealing with, from retention to recruiting to morale. Oh, no, it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's your fault. And because it's your fault, it's actually a good thing. We can control that, right? If it was some third-party entity that we didn't control, I would have no hope. But the truth is, I have hope because there's lots of good men and women, maybe not in chiefs positions yet, that are in our agencies that are willing to make a change, willing to sacrifice, and willing to lead.
Amen to that. To dovetail off of that, there is a great amount of good leadership that's there. Like at my agency, I always prided myself on developing that leader coming up. That first year officer that shows some potential, start taking that person and developing them as leaders. At my former agency, it was the contract says that the senior guy is always going to be the officer in charge when the sergeant's gone. And I said, that's bullshit because my senior guy is incompetent. My youngest officer was the leader of the shift. I didn't have 100 officers to manage, so it was 4 people on my shift. I was a 20-man department. But what I'm saying is that the youngest, newest officer there had natural leadership ability about them. And to develop that, and it took me hell and high water to get a memorandum of understanding passed through our union to be able to. You know what's
so wild, Mark? You know what's so wild? Our culture, and David talked about it, our culture is so unhealthy.
Yes.
They don't want you mentoring those young officers. They haven't earned that. They haven't been on 3 years or 5 years. They haven't deserved that. Man, let me tell you something. And get back to that goose story. If we empowered the people in our agencies with the talents they had and said, get after it, change the world, we would radically change our communities. Absolutely. But we don't do that. You may have some rookie officer that knows something, has great ideas, great concepts, great creativity. We mute them until they earned it. Maybe they have to take their shirt to the dry cleaners and get some stripes sewn on their arm, and now they can have a little bit of a say-so, but not too much say-so, Mark, because they're not a captain or lieutenant yet. And then they get that, not too much say-so. Rank has got nothing to do with changing our departments for the better. Exactly. Nothing. Exactly. We have some of the best men and women this country has to offer wearing this uniform, and rank has nothing to do with it. If we empower them, it changes the world. But because of everything we're talking about and these weak cowards, because if you're weak, man, you put yourself around other weak people. You're intimidated by people that may have more knowledge or whatever it is, and they mute them because they have the control of IA, they have the control of power, they have the control of discipline. And I think, as I said earlier, we've exposed it because A lot of officers know that, right?
Yes.
And they're looking for that. And let me ask you guys both a question. Why don't we expose every single police recruit in the academy to high-level leadership skills? I'm just going to ask you the question, and then I'll give you my answer.
Dr. David.
They become a threat if educated and trained.
I can't say it better.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's why they call him Dr. David, right? I couldn't say any clearer myself, because let me tell you something. In the military, it's complete opposite. You're exposed to high-level leadership skills day one. Day one. And I talked to a lot of our past military folks that become police officers, and their minds explode because it's such a different dichotomy of what they're used to. They can't understand what they're seeing. So people need to understand, especially citizens, the law enforcement profession is completely whacked when it comes to leadership, because they have this hierarchy system. Oh, you went and you passed a test. Oh, you danced in front of an assessment center, and now all of a sudden we bless you with a rank. That makes you not any smarter. In fact, you lose brain cells every day, so you're actually dumber tomorrow than you were yesterday, right? So no, you're not any smarter. You're not any better. Leadership's leadership. And man, if we would give this in the academy and continue that through their career, what we could accomplish is unheard of. But that's going to take swallowing your ego, swallowing your pride, and admitting that, man, I'm a chief, or I'm whatever rank I am, but there are people around me that are just as capable. Let's empower them. And let me tell you guys, when you do this job 30 years, there's not a whole lot of clear things you can remember, right? Because it all kind of jumbles together. Right. But let me tell you something. The moments in my career, and listen, I very much is like most people, many of the years I worked, my agency did not use my talents. They did not empower me. They didn't put me in position to use my talents, but there were times they did. And my drive and my motivation during those time periods was incredible, because I recognized, man, they trust me to do this job. Right. They've given me the tools to do this job.
Exactly.
I'm going to do the best job I can, not for me, but for the agency. And I tried to go throughout my career doing that for other people. And I saw how it worked. I saw how great it was. Yes. And by the way, as a leader, as an administrator, as a supervisor, it made my job easier. Why do I want to be doing everything? Let's find somebody really good at what they do and say, man, go change the world. Let's get after it. And I would watch them do it. And that's some of the best memories I have.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And if you have a good team that surrounds you, you hit the nail on the head there. Yeah. You don't have to work as hard because you have subject matter experts right there under your nose. Let them do what they're doing. We all succeed when we succeed as a team. Yeah. And as the leader of whatever group you are, developing those people underneath you and giving them skills and allowing them to use them, that's the biggest thing. It's the same way with my department, Travis. Did you know I was never allowed to be a field training officer, although I asked for it several times? No, we're not going to have you do that. Why not? When I made to rank a sergeant, you know who the training sergeant was? Not me. I've only been training at the state level since 2004. That's, when you and your sergeant came over and visited us and drove with us. And I was trying to remember what year that was you came to Ohio. And that was
I'll tell you, I was with Jack Honer.
You were.
Driving guy, yeah. And we Jeff Eggleston offered us the week there at the facility.
Yes, sir.
And the only thing I remember about that place was it was London, right? London,
yes,
Ohio.
Yes, sir.
The only thing I remember is that seedy bar that Jack would take me to, right?
The Crown.
Man, that thing spooked me. I don't know if it's still there, but it scared me to death. I'm a married guy trying to live by my Lord, and he'd take me in that little seedy bar, and I was like, man, I feel the heebie-jeebies in this.
Funny story about that. Funny story about your visit there is our driver, our best driver, right? Jack ran him off the track. Jack humiliated him.
He's incredible, man. And listen, same thing. I ran that unit, but I fully would say, hey, Jack and Will, I don't think you guys met Will, but they were two of my best drivers. I said, get after it, gentlemen. I wasn't affected by that. I took pride in the fact that those guys were so good because they came. I brought them in and I trained them.
Yeah. I learned so much from you two that week when you were there. Techniques of how to handle the car and things like that. So can I jump back here real quick? We were talking about these leaders and is there a gauge out there? So I was a city councilman for 2.5 terms, and coming from the game, I kind of had an inside track, and the police chief at the little village where I was at, my thing is that, hey, what do you need? I'm going to get you all the money you need to run your department. Is there a gauge out there or someplace where some of these city officials could go to score or gauge? Say you have a really awful chief, but to them, like my dad always told me, Mark, you're only as good as what your boss thinks you are. And if the city manager thinks you're walking on water and you're just an absolute moron, is there a gauge out there from any of these chiefs associations that can rate a police chief?
Good one.
You're talking my language now. The answer is no. Clearly, I think you understand why the answer is no. They're the best that ever been in their own head. They don't want anything threatened. Right. But here's what needs to happen, and I'm actually in the process of trying to figure this out. And if any of your listeners have any ideas, I would love to hear from them. TravisYates.org. You'll find all my stuff there. Mm-hmm. We are lying to our recruits. We're spending millions of dollars on marketing materials and fancy websites and fancy videos. We're making these departments look like the greatest thing ever. And we get them in the door, and they get there for 6 months or a year, and they go, ooh, this was not what I thought. So what we are in desperate need of, and the private business world has been doing it for years, is we need to rate our agencies, which would be a rating on leadership. So I want to rate leadership in an agency. And I'm really close to pulling something off with it. And it's going to be something to the effect of, because before I do that, it has to be validated. Dr. David would tell you all this stuff, right? You want to be able to support it with actual evidence, research driven. And so it's going to be categorized out, but it's going to come from the employees. You can ask 10 employees in any agency, and you'll figure out at the end of those 10 people whether it's a good agency or not, right?
Oh, yeah.
Not just opinion, but tell me exact examples of what's going on. And so I know they're not going to be necessarily rating the chief, but I'm of the opinion that the entire chain of command is a reflection of a chief. Because what we see in a lot of agencies is a lot of your supervisors to your middle management, they're all wanting to go to the next rank. Oftentimes, they will emulate who's at the top.
Right.
And so you may have a bad chief, but what people will notice is they'll start seeing people around them changing to conform to that bad chief. And that once that starts occurring, it's very difficult to get that culture back. And so I would love to come up with, a rating system for the leadership in these agencies, which I do think will reflect our chiefs and other folks, where our officers will know what type of agency that is. And, that has not been done. And it's pretty amazing to think it hasn't been done with all of the millions of dollars being poured into these organizations. But I think that's going to be extremely important to do. I think unions need to grab onto that, right? Like you need to know from a health perspective where your agency is on leadership. Because if you don't know what to work on. And I know many of the chiefs will hate it. I would personally love it. I would love to be rated every year on how I'm doing, so I can know what to work on, what to improve on. Right. But most people aren't that, clearly. And but here's how unhealthy the culture is, Dr. David and Mark. Do you know of any police chief anywhere that's been fired for crime going up?
That's funny. Let's go look at the city of Memphis.
That really turns into a very sick environment, because our sole mission is in our name.
Yes.
Law enforcement.
Bam.
That is the mission of our profession. Okay. And our sole mission, not only are we not evaluating agencies based on leadership, no one seems to care about crime, but that's the mission. It's like saying McDonald's doesn't care about their cheeseburgers. No, they do.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why they're handing surveys to all the customers. They want to make sure they're meeting their mission, right?
Exactly.
And the fact that, and I have put this on social media, I'm trying to find one chief in America that was actually fired for high crime. Maybe it's happened, but up until today, I haven't found it. And they'll be fired for a bunch of other things, but it has nothing to do with the mission, right? And so that is not good for our communities. Your community deserves for your police department to be held accountable for their only mission, which is crime.
It seems to me that the cowards that get up in that corner office, they're afraid to go out and enforce the law. And cops just want to do cop shit. That's why I wanted to become a police officer. I wanted to do some good. I wanted my people to feel safe in their beds at night. And, and like in our community, they were very appreciative of the fact that, my motto was as a working B cop was take care of your good people, F the bad ones. And I had these undesirables that moved down to our city because, hey, it's really nice. Right. Yeah. So you live peacefully or I will keep arresting you until you move away. And one guy, one evening, he was crying as I had him in the back of my car. I've never been arrested so much in my life. Well, dude, that's what we do here. We take care of our good people. You're being
You do your job.
Yeah, my job is to convince you to move somewhere where you don't have this problem. And they did. But that's such a valid point. If your crime rate is high, why are you still getting this big salary? Get it? My dad
there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the profession. We could fix it tomorrow, Mark and Dr. David. And here's how you fix it. You tell every police chief in America, if the crime goes up 2 years in a row, you're gone. And you know what they'll do? It's crazy because we know how to curb crime.
Yes.
We did it all through the 90s.
Yes.
Lowest in our history. We know the tools it takes to curb crime. You know what those chiefs would do? They'd say, hey, Mark, go curb crime.
Go do what you do.
They would do it if their job was on the line. But the truth is their job is actually on the line politically if they do go curb crime. And listen, here's a quick answer for that. If in the political world, if they're upset that you're actually enforcing the law, it's easy. You tell the politicians, hey, you don't like me enforcing the law, get rid of the law. You control the law books. You control the ordinances. If you don't want me curbing crime, stopping these criminals, shoplifters, rape suspects, robbery suspects, go decriminalize the law. Because as it stands now, you put the law on the books, but then you're mad at me when I use the law. And so, but nobody's going to stand up and do that because they believe that's going to hurt their job. And let me tell you guys, you can't be a police chief in any major city today by saying your main goal is to curb crime. They will not hire you. If you don't start bobbling your head and get that old Bill Clinton look and go, my main job is to gain community trust. Gain community trust. If you don't say that, you will not be hired. And by the way, community trust has nothing to do with our mission. Would I like the community to trust us? Does that help our job? Of course. But you know how you do that? It's not using TikTok. No. It's not doing breakdancing videos. You know how you do that? Why do you trust a business, Mark? You look like an Apple guy to me. You kind of have this weird Southern California vibe going on. You tell me why you like Apple. Right. You trust them because they do a heck of a job. Mm-hmm. They make a great device. Mm-hmm. They have good customer service. When you walk into the store, you feel like you're going to start smoking weed, but you like the store anyway, right? You're kind of hippied out. That's why you trust them. You don't trust them because they're saying whatever you want to hear and they're doing TikTok. No, you trust them because they're providing a great service. So how you build trust is you do a great job. And by the way, the last I checked, Gallup's been doing the trust ratings for the last 50 years in our professions. And law enforcement has been in the top 4 all 50 years.
Yes.
The last time I saw it, we had an 82% trust rating from the American public. School teachers, doctors, pretty much the only ones that have been above us. The people that are screaming for community trust, politicians are around 9% is where Congress is, and the media's at 11%.
Yes.
So it's a scam. And it's a scam because they'll never tell you what level of community trust do we need. And by the way, you can see all of the reforms and all of the changes that are happening across this profession based on that lie. We have to do this because of what? Amen. Not because of our mission, not because of crime control, community trust. It's a metric that you cannot measure. Right. It's 82% now. What could it be? Well, the fact is the data and most of the research will say it's not going to ever get much higher. There's about 10 to 15% of the public that will never like us. And I have the data to back that up. I talk about this in my seminar. So quit worrying about the other 10 or 15 or 20%.
Yeah. Why are you making decisions?
But what you're doing by trying to placate to those folks that never trust you is you're alienating the ones that do trust you. Correct. So here's how you build community trust. You do your job and you do it well. And people will tend to like that.
Yes.
But we are so far off the reservation, so to speak. We're so far away from that. I don't even know what to say about it. We could talk for hours about that, but it's not hard to get it back, Mark. We need to be mission focused. End of story.
Yeah, and I think that mission is take care of your people.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I wrote an article a few months ago called Do They Care?
Right.
And I want to sort of describe that to our folks. And you can read my articles on Substack. And I could give you that website, but just go to travisyates.org and you can hit Substack and you can plug your email in and get all these articles. But here's why I ended up writing the article. I started getting this thought in my head how important caring should be. So I actually did a dissertation a couple of years ago. I would not recommend it, as Dr. David will tell you.
Hell no.
And my dissertation was not on that. My dissertation was on how communication affects organizational performance. And you're going to say, that sounds smart. No, I was just lazy. I knew there was a lot of data already out there, and I figured I got to make this thing easier because I'm not that smart. I'm going to get through this thing. So what I found out by studying this topic, and it had never been studied in law enforcement before, so it was really interesting to see what happened is yes, obviously communication affects many aspects of it. It's what the themes of my dissertation show. But when I heard this thing about caring, I did a word search on that, because caring, I did a word search on the dissertation, 300, 400 page dissertation. I did a word search and caring starts popping up because I did interviews with a lot of officers. And the quotes from officers, that yes, they were talking about performance. They were talking about people not communicating, but in their quotes, they kept saying, they don't care about me. It doesn't seem like they care about me. They don't empower me. They don't care. It was all throughout. And I had this sort of revelation. I'm like, that's it. That's it. All the leadership gurus, all the people out there that are giving you the fancy memes. If we just go to work tomorrow and go, let's care for people more, it changes everything.
Yeah.
It changes everything. It's that simple. How we have messed up the concept of leadership and taking care. I don't know how we've done it, but we've had to work really hard. Just go care for people. I'll tell you one quick story about that. I was on the department a couple of years, and we had a chief at the time. I'll give him credit. He's a great chief, Ron Palmer. He came from Kansas City. Young guy when he got here. He's like in his early 40s when he came to my department. I don't know. He'd been there 4 or 5 years when I got there. But he would ride every month with an officer, just a random officer. He'd show up, whatever shift, decked out, vest. He'd ride the entire shift. I always thought that was cool. I always thought that was cool until one day I got a call from his administrative assistant that said, hey, the chief's going to ride with you this month. And I go, what's the odds of that? 600 some odd officers in patrol. He's riding with me. And I was freaked out. You know, I'm like a 1-year officer, and I cleaned the car, and I'm all nervous. And he shows up. And oddly enough, that night, I couldn't get a lot of backers. I don't know what was going on, but we ended up having a great time. I kind of relaxed. We had a great conversation. It was really fascinating for a young officer to be around someone that had already sort of had that street cred, and he was a chief in a major city. We get to the end of the night. And by the way, this is how important caring is, guys, and the audience. This is how important it is. I remember this like it was yesterday. I wrote it in my book. I remember like it was yesterday. I get out of my car. He gets out of the car. He's walking to his car. I'm walking to my car. This is after a evening shift, so it's like midnight. And he's walking away, and we're about 20 yards away. And he says, Travis. I turn around. I said, yes, Chief. He says, man, you're a great cop. I really appreciate you tonight.
Wow.
And man, I tell you, I'm getting emotional telling a story from 30 years ago.
Very cool.
Those words,
Very cool.
those few seconds he took, because he meant it. You could tell he meant it. It was authentic. He didn't have to stop and say that. He'd already thanked me in the car, but he stopped me and he said, man, you're a great cop. I really appreciate you. Those words got me through 30 years. There were times when I wanted to stop, times I wanted to quit. Those words got me through 30 years. That's amazing. How are we not doing that for others? Right? That when I talk about leadership lessons, that right there surpassed all the seminars, all the training, all the books that I've ever read on leadership. That right there. It's that simple, guys.
Yes, exactly. As you point out in your presentations, it's as simple as the golden rule. Treat people the way you would like to be treated. It's that simple. And I have a client who taught me the silver rule, which I'd never heard before. Don't treat people the way you don't want to be treated.
Yeah.
And I think, yes, exactly.
I'm totally stealing that one, man. I love it.
So it's that simple. It's that elegant. It's that focused. And it's also that real. When you do that, it becomes powerful instantly.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys. So if it's this simple, how do we get it back? How do we get back there?
I'll start with this one.
Good.
You got to be humble. how many leaders out there are willing? So we have to do these things once, twice a year, which I call it a joke. It's called an evaluation. Didn't you hate doing evals, Travis, for your people?
Yeah, because they were worthless for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you just always kind of cut and paste. And what did he do last year? And this is our year, or whatever the period of time is. So you milk it down to you either got a 1 through 5 or 1 through 3 or, whatever
But oftentimes, if you give a certain number, you got to give documentation so everybody kind of get down the middle, right? We just give them down the middle score.
Right. Because if the guy's a total F up, you're not going to score him low because then you have to show what was your employee improvement program or why is in F up and what'd you do, blah, 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 blah. All right. So if I had to do these for my people, right, because there was 0 leadership training in my department when I got promoted. Here's your keys. Here's your stripes. Go do sergeant shit. How do I do that? I don't know. Figure it out. So in order for me to gauge, am I serving my people? And now I'm not the guy standing there directing. My job as a leader was to make my people's job the easiest it could be. How can I serve you and make your job easy, make your job fun, make you enthusiastic about coming to work? So I didn't have a way to gauge that. So I'm thinking, who's evaluating me? Oh, it's the guy in the corner office that I never see. Because we work 6P to 6A. He works 8 to 4, so I literally never see the guy. And on council nights when he's supposed to be there at 7, he never came through the department. He walked in the front door of the city building and just totally avoided us. So my officers never really knew who he was. So who should be really evaluating me?
Your officers.
Bingo. So that's what I did. I recreated, because we were 1 through 5, which I thought was a fucking joke. So either am I meeting your needs? Yes. Am I exceeding your needs? Hopefully. Or am I not meeting your needs? And if I'm not, I want to know what I'm doing wrong. And I was humble enough to say, this is your chance. Because the guy up the corner really has no idea what I do here. But from you, if you people, who's the face of this department, are telling him, hey, Sergeant Mark is doing a great job, I want you to hear that. Or if I'm effing something up, I want to know that too. You can't give me a 1, which does not meet expectation, because I want details. I want to know how I did that. Now, if I pissed you off on a scene or I had to get stripe heavy for something and you're that one time you're mad, I get it. Okay. And if you're raw about it, put it in there. But I want him to see that. And I also wanted that to be included with my yearly evaluations from him to see what kind of work I did. And there's other sergeants on my department like, hey, no fucking way I'm doing that. Why? How do you know? And Travis, I want to tell you this real quick. The best compliment I got was from one of my officers, and the poor bastard had to work for me the first 6 years or 7 years of his career. And he evolved along, and he really grew, and really took on a leadership role. And when I was giving him his evaluation, I said, "Hey, Jimmy, I really wish I had this guy for the past 6 years." And he says, "You know what, Sergeant? I really wish I had this sergeant for the past 6 years, because at first I thought these evals you gave us was bullshit, but you actually read them, and when you're doing something we don't like, you changed." He said, "You really evolved." So that was the greatest compliment I ever had as a boss. But I think in order to be humble and is to get that bottom up view. How are you being viewed from the people that you're managing? Right. And I think that's where leaders need to look at their opinion and take that to heart.
Yeah, I obviously it's an individual agency basis, but we're almost at the point to where unless the guy or gal at the top brings that humility, endorses that humility, demands that humility,
yes,
no one is going to even consider that for the most part, right? I mean, you're going to have those. Listen, I don't want to come across in this show that everybody's bad. Of course they aren't.
No, we have some.
But right now, the bad ones are outweighing the good ones, right? The good ones are being muzzled. I mean, you just look at the data. I'm a big data nerd, right? Look at the data. What's our recruiting like? What's our retention like? I'm in rooms all the time, guys. And for the last couple of years, I've asked this question. So probably a few thousand folks. Who here knows somebody that left their department before they wanted to? I'm not talking about you. But who here knows somebody that wanted to stay 20 years, but they left early? They wanted to stay 30 years, they left early. Every hand for 2 years has gone up.
Oh, yeah.
That
Absolutely.
is a recipe for complete bankruptcy in this profession.
Yes.
And then when you look how we're trying to recruit which is a whole nother crazy topic, how you think some recruiting video is going to convince somebody to become a police officer. Washington, D.C. Metro just won the recruiting video of the year by Police One. We're at the lowest staffing in history, so congratulations on your video. When you start looking at that, you think, not only are these folks not humble, they're dumb at the same time, because if I have a recruiting problem, I want to find out how to recruit. I don't need I just don't want something that looks great.
Right.
Website and video, this and that. I mean, there's some companies bringing down millions of dollars because they build websites. They charge $19.95 prices to these departments, and they pay them. And I know this because I'm involved in a recruiting company, and I help them with some contracts. And dude, it's crazy what I'm seeing these agencies are doing, and it won't work. It will never work. We know. I've seen the data, the campaigns on our recruiting campaigns. Like we just had a client, and they're down a lot of officers, and these guys I work with are just brilliant. And they actually can tell you the exact cost it takes to hire how many officers you need. They look at the conversion rates of applicant to hire, and they ask that question, and they go, okay, you need 50 officers. It's going to cost you this. You'll get the people. And the departments look at them like they're being lied to because everyone's a bunch of scam artists that are talking to these departments. No, they're not being lied to. I've watched it time and time again.
Right.
And there's a department, and they said, well, how do you do this? And they explained, and they said, well, will you use our video? Because they're all proud of these videos, right? And we told them, like, we'll use your video, but your video won't work. We know from the data in our campaigns, but we'll take our 4 ads that we think will work. We'll A/B test those ads, and we'll put your video in there. Their video got a 0.03% engagement.
Oh my goodness.
Their video, when we finally showed him that, he goes, oh, dude, well, we have to understand that comes with humility, Mark. What you think you know, you may not know. What you like may not be what recruits like. And we've never had to recruit. Listen, I tested with almost 1,000 people for 9 spots. There were, for the duration of my career until the last few years, there were many more candidates than we had openings. Right. So that means you're not recruiting. You are marketing. You're just making your department look good to try to get the best candidates. But when you lose that, I call it the 80-20 rule. Now we still have 80% for the most part that they're going to come to your department. That's just their people. God calls certain people to serve their community. They're going to try to find a department to do it. But that other 20%, or if you're Portland, that other 78%, you're going to have to go find them. You're going to have to actually recruit. Well, that's a specialized skill. You don't have anybody in your department that necessarily knows how to do that. You have people that can go to a job fair and wave at people. And by the way, there's nobody there because there's this thing called the internet, or you can put, signs up at a bus station. I've heard all these crazy stories. None of it is work. But it's a professional skill, and you're going to have to humble yourself and go, man, I can't solve this problem on my own. But they're throwing a lot of money at it, and it's not being solved. And my fear is a lot of these leaders are just going to give up and say, that's just the way it is. No, it's not the way it is. And there's going to be downstream problems with this. And I want to get you guys' opinion on this. A lot of departments, this is not every department, but there are some departments, this is going to sound crazy, but I have seen it, guys. They don't want to solve the recruiting problem. Some of the unions, don't send me an email saying I'm saying everybody. Some of the departments, some of the unions don't want to solve the recruiting problem because your biggest cost in the agency is personnel.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Well, if you're down 20%, you've got a lot of money to play with, and they're spending that money in overtime for the officers filling the beats, making a ton of money. But here's the problem with that. The mental health side of that, down the road.
Exactly.
You're taking an officer that we build and we train for a healthy 20, 25-year career. And by year 6, they are done.
Oh, yeah. And
we are going to see, if we do not fix this recruiting issue and we keep relying on filling the beats and making all this overtime, and you roll the riots into it that we experienced the last several years that we're about to experience this year more than likely because politicians know one game only.
Yeah, that's right.
When you roll that chaos on top of that, there's officers, Mark, that for almost a year never got a day off in this country during 2016.
I know. Yes.
And it was all high stress environments.
You can only take that for so long.
What that's going to do to those individuals, to their life, to their family, to their health. We do not want to see what that looks like down the road. And no one is talking about that because there doesn't seem to be this push to actually figure the recruiting thing out because they think they have the solution because they just fill the beats and people work the overtime. That's not the solution. Right. Oh, we'll give them a big hiring bonus. Not the solution. No.
That's
because if they're going to come to work for your agency on a hiring bonus, they'll leave your agency for another hiring bonus. That's not the solution. The solution is to fix it, right? And there are people that care. Like we've got a couple clients now that they really get it and they really want to fix it, and they're working with us, and it's working very, very well. But there are so many others. I had a conversation with the chief the other day, and this guy, I think he's down 14 officers. It's not a hard problem to fix. We talked about the processes. We showed our successes. Mark and Doctor, there's an agency we sent 1,400 people in 1 month to them. It's a big agency.
Holy cow! Because
we know the processes, and they'd never seen anything like that before. But we know how to do it, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we actually have smart little technology kids that know how to do it, but we know how to do it. And I say it's not a problem. And we gave them a price that was well below their hiring bonus, by the way, that they're giving out. Well below. It's one hiring bonus.
Boom.
And he says, yeah, but can you do a video? I just told you that we were going to solve your problem. And you came back and said, can I do a video? Well, of course we can do a video. Sure. Any 12-year-old can do a video. But do you want to solve the problem or do you want a video? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure they all want to solve the problem, and that is scary.
Well, I think the best recruiter, because I tell you what, I loved being a cop. Would you agree with that, Dr. David?
Oh, yes.
I ate, slept, pooped, being the police.
But Dr. David, you got a lot of work off of Mark because he loved it a little too much.
Oh, yes.
That's the truth.
Yeah, lots of billable time there at the end. But when I was happy in my job, I was the best recruiter my department had. Mm-hmm. Hey, do you love your job? Oh, absolutely. Best job in the world. Yeah. And I still think it's the best job in the world.
No, it's fantastic you say that because we actually have an affiliate program, which is not a unique concept. Every brand out there, you can get an affiliate link and they pay you. So we said, hey, stop giving. There's a department right now that giving $75,000 bonus. They can't get anybody to come there. I said, take that money, make your officers the recruiters. We can roll out an affiliate program for you, and they can put these links out on social media to their friends. And when someone clicks, pass the money off to the officer. And they're just like, can you do a video? I'm like, what is wrong with you? What's going on here? So it's sort of just a lot of these leaders think that they have the answers for everything, and they clearly don't. There's somebody in every department that has a specialty in everything. We just have to empower them, and man, it would change everything.
So I'm a big social media guy. I love Facebook, Instagram.
I see the TikTok dances all the time. I know
don't do that. But that's all right. I know you're busting my chops. That's funny. So our department, my boss comes back from ICP and puts out a directive that you should.
I don't have whiskey in here, so be careful what you're saying here, Mark. This is just good old Diet Coke. Right?
We'll trust you on that. So you cannot put any image on social media. This is a policy he came out with when he comes back from ICP because he's all smart now because he's just been down rubbing elbows with smarter people than him, so he thinks. Our badge, our logo, the side of the car, anything that represents the department. So, when I was a younger officer, very proud of my job, I always got shit tons of pictures around of me in uniform. And I said, and I went into him because, we were trying to launch our social media at our department at the time, had Mark Weaver down, he's talking about, things to do to get interaction with your Facebook page. And I said, where'd we come up with this? Why do you not want us? Because I'm always positive on my social media. My motto is face your problems, don't Facebook them. So why don't you want these young officers who are damn proud of being the police and they want to show all their friends what they're doing at work? Why don't you want to do that? He leans back in his chair and he says, well, it's a best practices act. Who's best practice? Well, it's just the way it's going to be. But who's best practice? Why? I need to know the why. He had nothing other than the fact he went to ICP, he sat in a seminar, and whoever that was hosting that seminar says, don't let him do this. So now you're complaining, chiefs, if you're listening, I have a recruiting problem. Well, yeah, because all your young officers, and I love what you said earlier, Travis, was, if this person brings someone in, give them a bonus or whichever. Now you've just taken all that away. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, the thing is, now I'm not saying this is me, gentlemen, but, as young officers go, unmarried young officers, some of them like to frequent, the hot spots at night where they're maybe looking for the female species or the male species or whatever. And limit. I got to tell you, man, the game always was, what do you do for a living?
Right.
I'm the police.
Yeah.
That was beneficial until it wasn't. And I know cops
Right.
today that will never tell anybody that's what they do.
Right. Not outside
And their
the job.
leaders did that to them.
Yes.
Their leaders did that to them. When you take pride away,
Yes.
what is the old PIG acronym? My dad used to have a plaque: pride, integrity, guts.
Guts. Yep.
No acronyms going on anymore. You know, when you take that pride and integrity and then you punish people for having guts.
Right.
Hey, we ought to clip that one, right? So let me say it again. When you take that pride and that integrity and you punish them for having guts, you've ruined that agency, because
Yes.
you're right. The best people that can recruit and help with the retention are people that love what they do and they're empowered to tell others about that. And I'll be honest, man. I mean, I've been so frustrated. Sometimes I wake up and I think, well, maybe I'm wrong. Like, no one else believes what I believe. Maybe I'm the crazy one, right? Because if you are crazy, Dr. David, you're the last one to know it, right?
That is correct.
Maybe I'm the crazy one. Maybe this is right. This is the way it ought to be, right? We should fire people for no reason, and we should pick chiefs that've never been a cop before in reality, and we should make officers scared to actually do their job, and then give them so much paperwork to do. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm convinced that the successes that I saw in the first 10 years of my career, and just these amazing men and women that were able to do that job in extreme circumstances, I'm convinced they still exist. We just have to flip the switch and make sure they know it. The problem is we're in the middle of imposter syndrome. Like, there's some departments now that if you've got the greatest leader ever at the top, no one's going to believe what they're being told because they've been beat down for so much.
Right.
And it's really, really unfortunate. You know, I'm extremely popular with the officer rank, and because they understand this, but you go up the rank system, I don't get invited to a lot of Chiefs conferences, right? And so, but I believe that if we can get the message to the line officers, even the first line supervisors, they will be in management and upper management eventually, and they can do what needs to be done. I have extreme hope, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of bad issues going on in the profession, but we still have really good men and women that do the job.
Oh, absolutely. So while you were talking there, we were talking about those people in the ranks and your resonation with the I call them the road dogs, the guys that's out there every day. And by the way, Midnight Crews, if you're listening, we love you. Keep doing what you're doing. We like day shift and evening watch too, but the Midnight Crews, you know, being a midnight sergeant,
we're going to still have all the calls holding for them.
That's right. So there's been kind of an attitude, and it was there when I left, and you were talking about the body cameras, and my boss at the time said, you need to do body camera audits. And I said, okay, why? Well, to be sure the guys are doing their job correctly. Okay. What are we looking for? Why? What are you going to... Well, then he said, well, you know, body cameras will vindicate the officer. And then he went down this rabbit hole shortly after implementing the body cameras and spending all the money. That me as a supervisor need to spend a couple hours of my week auditing video. And if there's a policy infraction, I'm to issue discipline. And I said, that's absolute horse hockey. The purpose of the body camera is to protect the officer, correct? Yes, everyone understands, protect him. So now we got this mentality that, say you got an incident and the lieutenant says, hey, Sergeant, I want you to go look at this. So some of these people that aren't being shown the way, I feel, that let's take care of our person. And so the sergeant reviews it, so he gets in his mindset that I need to find something wrong, because if I don't get a pound of flesh out of this officer, then I'm not doing my job, and I don't want the LT coming after me or whoever's above him. What happened to the day when... so he said the F word. I can take care of this at my level. And have that conversation with the lieutenant or whomever. Says, if my guy did step on his hoo-hoo, is it something at my level we need to take care of? Or do I need to, chastise this officer for saying the F word? So I think we've gotten into the mindset, especially with the body cameras, is that where the cops are afraid to do their job because of that. So if I'm out there, and sometimes you have to speak to people in the language in which they're used to being talked to, right? I mean, you get somebody from the street who uses lots of foul language, or
Yeah, we should always start with Chick-fil-A. And if it's needed,
yes.
we move up to Delta Airlines, right?
Yes.
And talk that way. Yeah.
Yes. But I think that, because of that and taking care of, so the guy did get a little aggressive with someone. Okay, I got that. So tell me the whole circumstance, officer. Okay, cool. I can and report it up the line. Honestly, I think that the supervisors from sergeants to lieutenants, and the lieutenants need to be taking care of the sergeants, and the captains need to be taking care of the lieutenants. It's not that we're out there trying to hide anything or the blue wall. But I think this attitude, and again, I'm going to revert back to my earlier statement, I think it started around Ferguson, because prior to that, I think we took care of people, and we had a lot of happy people. And when this change came, I knew a lot of the old guys like me were like, you know what? I got 25 years in. F this place. I'm leaving. And they did. They left. I mean, I didn't want to work past 30 years. This is a young man's game. But like what you were saying earlier, Travis, it really resonated me with the fact that we're just wearing these people out, and they're be done in 6 to 10 years. Why do we have to have a 25-year career? Why can't we vest these people in 10 to 15 years?
I've got a theory behind the pension system.
Sure, go
By
ahead.
the way, there are departments right now that only still exist because they have a pension system. Minneapolis is a prime example. They go from $850, now they're hovering in the mid 400s, and the only reason they're not down to 150 right now, and the sheriff's department hasn't taken over that city, is because Minnesota has a fantastic pension system. So you've got your officers with 10, 15 years on that are holding on for dear life while the politicians are trying to throw them in prison. But I believe when I came on, 20 years was the out. Everyone left at 20. That was the standard, right? And of course, these states started incentivizing staying longer. But my theory is why military is at 20 and fire departments traditionally are 20. We were traditionally at 20 is somebody somewhere said, and that's probably as long as you need to do this type of job. This is a very high stress job. Lots of risk, cumulative stress, as Dr. Dave will tell you how dangerous that is.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
20 years is probably the maximum, right? And then as they added the incentives, people start staying longer and longer. And then we wonder why our pension systems are so well funded. Well, I'll tell you why. When we die 10 to 15 years prior to most citizens, that's why your pension system is well funded, right? And so as usual, we're making these decisions on our own. And you said something that's powerful, and I talk a lot about in my seminars on culture, because it's so important. And if you're working in an agency and you want to know or maybe your agency your store's starting to see some things that are weird. You're not really down the way of Portland and Chicago yet, but you're seeing some things that are weird. You're seeing some behaviors that are weird. Here's how you can tell that your agency is marching down the road of destruction. And I call it the hallway conversation. And you alluded to it, Mark. As a supervisor, as a manager, there's a difference in a mistake and an intentional act.
Correct.
There's a huge difference, right?
Yes.
We've lost that way, because what used to be a hallway conversation, hey, you pull a guy in a hallway away from everybody and you go, hey, man, I've gotten 2 complaints in the last month on your speeding. You're speeding, right? Man, listen, you can't do that. I care about you. It's dangerous. Stop that. I don't want to get any more complaints from this, right? Pat him on the shoulder, say, keep up the good work, and let that guy go to work and do his job. Those have turned from hallway conversations to full-blown internal affairs complaints.
Absolutely.
And if your agency is there and that is happening, buckle up, because it's coming. Your culture is being destroyed because you have forgiven the ability of those hallway conversations. And that's not some idea that these cop haters say, oh, see, you're not holding people accountable. No, every business in the world that's successful has hallway conversations.
Absolutely.
Every one of them. These businesses would not exist because the private world's different. If you don't have happy employees, you don't get great products and you don't stay in business.
Exactly.
So every business in the world understands the difference between a mistake and an intentional act, and they treat it accordingly. When your department forgets that and they lost their way, you're going down that path, and somebody, hopefully somewhere, will interject and get that back on the right track.
Oh, amen to that. And Dr. David alluded to it earlier when we were talking about how cops are so vicious to one another. And I think we get into that loop of you're overworked, you're mad, you're negative, and now you got this person above you that's, just criticizing everything that we do. And this is a high stress, high liability job. And if you're a chief, it's high stress, high liability. You know that getting in there, and you can't go in there and just think that this job is about you. And I really love when you said that earlier on, Travis, that, you know, most of the chiefs nowadays are doing this for them. They aren't doing it for the department. And I had the blessing of working for a boss that was all about the department and all about every officer. And he would just, when he walked through our road room, or what we call it, where we did our reports, you know, he would sit down with his cup of coffee. Hey, how you doing today? How's your family doing? And he actually showed general empathy and concern for you. And he'd say, hey, I got to get over to the council. Hey, take care if you need anything. My door's open. Just come down and see me. And he would always ask us early on, and as a young officer, Mark, what do you want to do? What do you mean, Chief? I want to be the police. You're that already. So it's just like a medical professional. What do you want to specialize in? What drives you? And you don't answer this now. Get back to me on that, because I'm going to help you develop into the person you want to be. And I like to drive. I'm a car guy. You know, that's how I first met you, Travis. I remember sitting there one night, and I'm on your first website. Can we say it? I know you sold it, but anyway.
No, I didn't sell it. It's still there. I just don't do much with it. But yeah, I mean, unbeknownst to me, in 1999, there wasn't a police driving website up yet. I did put the website up to keep me from being so busy, because I was sending, this is going to age me, I was sending CD-ROMs of curriculum to agencies that were asking for it. Right. And I had this crazy idea. If I just put a website up, they'll leave me alone. Well, when you put the first website up back in the day of a topic, everything then, of course, blew up. It's policedriving.com.
Yeah. And it was just such a great, I was like, oh my God, I think I found the holy grail here. So, and I still play.
Well, I built that with Microsoft front page. I don't think it was that great, but it was 1999, right? There wasn't much out there.
The content was great. And I still use your video today when I teach my recruits. From about wearing the seatbelt. So I use that even today. I think I've sent you some snapshots in the past. But anyway, so that's my thing. I'm a driver. You know, he facilitated me going to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. I mean, total, I've been down there 5 weeks, not concurrently, but, you know, in what I do. And I'm also, I'm blessed right now to be still teaching. Today, we taught 15 officers pursuit termination techniques the last day of our class at state. You know, I teach at the basic level. So it's kind of my niche. And my boss was like, go for it, man. I'm going to facilitate everything you can do. I'm also a car guy, so he made me the fleet manager. I had a blessing of being
It's not hard, man. Find out what people love and plug them in.
Yeah, and he did. And I served 3 years on the Ford Police Advisory Board. It's like, oh, man, you know, I had a really great career. And then, unfortunately, God called him home. Okay? So, and we gave him an honors funeral. But then things started to change. Yeah. And the next guy in the door just, everything was the same. And then when he started implementing him, then we started going downhill. Then the cowardice started showing up.
It's a great line.
Yeah, thank you. But, you know, and then we're like, then we stopped taking care of people. Then we started over-disciplining people. And I'm like, and I remember being a supervisor, it's like, is this really necessary? This guy's, we had one of our officers, he was my officer, officer of the year, high speed, low drag, great arrest, great interaction with the people. Well, he found himself in a bad spot one night and got a DUI. Horrible. The local news media, for some reason, our city is clickbait for the local news media app. So he let in every story because they wanted ratings, right? So I think a severe penalty for a first offense, OVI, is 10 days. I think that's heavy-handed. I think the state average here in Ohio is 5 days. But
it always depends on the history, right? They've been in trouble before, this and that. Yeah, obviously. You got to put everything in context.
This kid is a model officer. Again, high-speed, low drag, great guy. That chief gave him 30 days unpaid. Yeah. And I went, are you kidding me? This is the first offense, man.
Guys, we are, man, this is fantastic. I can't thank you enough for being here. And
sorry.
We're going to bring this to an end in a minute because we're going to come back on and do this again. But I wanted to end with one last question.
Yes, sir.
I want us to talk to the first line supervisors out there, the corporals, the sergeants, maybe in some departments, lieutenants, the people that I believe have the most impact at their agency, can leave generational legacy pouring into the people that work for them. I'll start with Dr. David, and then Mark, you can take it over. What's the one piece of advice you'd give them? What would you give them?
People that are already employed in law
Yeah,
enforcement?
to these supervisors that are having the responsibility of these men.
To the
What advice would
supervisors.
you give those supervisors in the auspices of everything we've been talking about today? Because they're discouraged, right? We want to encourage them and give them some advice that really help them. Because I don't care how bad it is in your department. If you're a sergeant or corporal or first, you have control of 10, 15 people sometimes, 4 people, 5 people. You get to change their lives regardless of what's going on. What's the piece of advice you'd give them?
I'd say become intimate with your limitations.
Oh, wow. I like that.
I feel like I got to send you a check for listening to that one. That's pretty good.
Thank you. It was my first lesson of adulthood in my career, in my field, was to learn what I didn't know was more important than what I did.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
I have to become intimate with my limitations.
I'm going barefoot right now, and I'm grounding right now just listening to that. That's amazing.
That's why we call him Master Yoda.
What about you, Mark?
Wow, it's hard to follow that up. I mean, I'm just still kind of taking that in. First line supervisors, take care of your people, number one. And I know that sounds cavalier. Make sure that they got what they need. Don't sit back and want to point the fingers. Be involved. Show up to work. All these incidents, you talked about Minneapolis. Where's the stripe? Why wasn't there a supervisor there? That was an ongoing shit show. And I can tell you, and Travis, and I know if you were working that day and you heard that radio traffic, you'd have been, whatever you were doing, hey, man, I got to go. I got something going on. I'll get back with you. Hang the phone up. I'm throwing my vest on, and I'm double timing it down to that scene. Any of these sprains, if you're a supervisor, be involved. Your people cannot survive out there on the street without your, and don't be that mother hen overshadowing. Find the balance. But when there's time for the supervisor to step in and to take care of business, do your jobs, guys. I mean, I've heard several here in my area, in the Dayton, Ohio area, that, where's your stripe at? He never comes out of the office. Oh, gosh, that hurts me. Okay. No, get involved. And I'm not saying being a micromanager. What do you need? I'd show up on scene. What do you need? And one time, one of my people, the guy comes over, Sarge, this is, no, I'm not in charge here, man. You need to go talk to him because that's the guy that's going to be arresting you or not. So take care of him. And when we got done with that scene, my officer said, man, thank you so much for doing that because that really empowered me that you trusted me and trusted my decisions. So support your people, trust them, empower them to make good decisions.
Man, I should have gone first with this answer. I want to say something that's a little bit different, I think. Know the names of your officer's family.
Oh, amen. Oh, yes.
Very good. Very good.
Know their wife's name.
Absolutely.
In a good way. Know their kids' names.
Yeah.
Ask them about their family.
Absolutely.
And and I'll be honest, man. If I was a mayor of some city with a police chief, here's how I'd evaluate my chief. I'd make him list off the family members of all their employees and see how many they could list.
That's right.
I would know immediately whether they cared for that office, for that department or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Man, what an incredible time, gentlemen. I really can't thank you guys enough. Do you guys have an outro of your show you want to sort of give or and then I'll give mine, or do you guys just play Dr. David's great montage before you leave out?
I'm always telling Dr. David he needs to be doing voiceover work for books. So in your next book, Travis, have Dr. David do the reading for us. He's got such a great voice. The outro, you mean how to get a hold of us, or what do you mean?
Well, I guess we should say that, right? So how do you get contacted? How do you listen to your show? All that stuff.
Okay, great. We're on all major podcast platforms: Audible, Pandora, iHeartRadio. It's the Shield Within podcast. You can find us on Facebook at Facebook.com/The Shield Within. Our website is www.theshieldwithin.com. We're also on Instagram. And then, of course, myself, my Marc the Cop moniker, I'm on X, Instagram, and all the other good stuff as well. And Dr. David, you're technology challenged, right?
By choice.
He's much happier than we are, for sure.
I love my ignorance in this area.
Well, Same here. My podcast is on all the same platforms. The actual podcast website we have is yatesleadership.com. But really, the easiest way, if folks are listening, they want to get resources, articles, podcasts, our seminars, and what we're doing. We're about to roll some online stuff out. You can go to travisyates.org. I'd love to hear from you. And every week we're putting material out, just for free to help folks. And so I'd love to hear from anybody listening. Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough. It's an incredible time.
Thank you, man.
It's an honor and a pleasure, brother. And definitely we need to do this again.
Yeah, we definitely will. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. And if you've been listening, thank you. And just remember, lead on and stay courageous.